This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Growth Show. I am your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today we have Justin Breen with us. Justin is the founder and CEO of global PR firm Brepic, an exclusive connectivity platform, Brepic Network. His newest book, Epic Life, features a foreword from Dr. Peter Diamandis and has been the #1 overall book for sales on Amazon Kindle. It also recently made the Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller lists. Welcome, Justin, to the show.
Doctor, good to talk to you.
Absolutely. I've appreciated getting to know you a little bit in the pre-show. And tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into PR? How did you decide you wanted to create this firm? Let's let you tell the story.
Well, one, it's great to be here. I love talking to LDS Mormon entrepreneurs because a Mormon mission is like literally going on an entrepreneurial journey. Like you knock on 5,000 doors to find 5 new Mormons. It's just like and it's just like, it really prepares you, I think, for entrepreneur life at the highest level. I was raised Jewish, but like have taken communion multiple times, almost married an African-American woman who was Southern Baptist, have been in like every religion imaginable. And I just think, Jewish folks and Mormons are the two most interesting entrepreneurial religions, because like you're pushed to the brink, and then like you got to figure it out, and then you just get rejected or ostracized, and then it makes you super strong. And I talked to a lot of LDS, entrepreneurs, and one of them was telling me that he's like, because I was saying Jews and Mormons, top 2 entrepreneur religions, and he's like, so there's a fundamental difference between them. I'm like, tell me what it is. I want to know. And he's like, so the Jews, they focus on the trades, or like transactions. So you see, like, this is him saying this. So like a Jewish attorney, Jewish finance, something in trades. And so focus on transactions. And then he was like, the LDS, they focus on relationships. So mission, you go, you knock on door, build relationship. And I was telling him, I'm like, thanks for telling me that. I'm a Mormon. So I'm a Jewish Mormon Jew. And you're a Mormon Jew, Jewish Mormon, I think. And you probably partner with a lot of Jewish people, I would guess. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've got a book called The Mormon Way of Doing Business. I don't know if you've ever read that.
No, fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know we'd even get into this conversation, but I think it's a great insight into a lot of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Some call us Mormons or LDS, right. But the religion itself, I think, does produce a lot of leaders and a lot of relational leaders. It's a really good point. When I did my PhD in family relations, I found a lot of members of our church who were also in a very similar degree throughout the country, wherever I went. We're focused on relations. So that's an interesting point, Justin. I appreciate you bringing that up and being on the show. As we're talking about balance, why is it important when you're growing your business that you have great balance? Let's go there for a minute.
So that's a really great question. And I love that the show is called Balanced Growth Show. So you're in balance and harmony, but still evolving as a human. Or like people like us are barely human, but evolving is however entrepreneurs do. So just as quick background, I was a journalist for 20 years. So you don't get into journalism for employee count, revenue, office space. Like I never took a business class in college. I still don't know what an S Corp is, because I think it's funny to not learn what that is. I don't want to know what it is. I didn't know you had to pay taxes 4 times a year when starting first company. So like total blank slate. And I think because of being a journalist, that's a career focused mainly on purpose. And so starting entrepreneur journey a little over 6 years ago with zero business background, it's always been focused on purpose and family and loved ones first. And And entrepreneurship really has allowed me just to extend that purpose exponentially at the highest level while still being able to put my family first. So that's what balance is to me. And then most of my day is either with my wife, who's a pediatrician, stabilizing human, and then our two sons that are 8 and 10, and they're both maniac entrepreneurs like me. Maniac's a compliment, but so is either with them or then talking to the world's top entrepreneur visionaries. So not business owners, not consultants, not humans. And I talk to 1 to 2 of those folks every single week, every week, that have let entrepreneur life destroy their family life or prevented them from anything meaningful. And so that's a bad idea. And so the latest book, Epic Life, is how to build collaborative global companies while putting your loved ones first. So that's, to me, is the ultimate balance, building collaborative global companies while putting loved ones first.
Yeah, that's where our overlap is right there. Balanced growth is all about that exact same concept. How do we grow this? How do we succeed, not just in business, but in every area of life? Right. And keep it all balanced. And, not the traditional sense. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm not talking about 50-50 split between work and life. I'm talking about your highest priorities. No. And as you mentioned, Justin, family typically tends to be one of those highest priorities. I've done keynotes all over the country, and I've asked this question. Here's 10 areas of life. Which one's the highest priority? Spiritual health, physical health, relationships with family. Those are the top 3 I see, just depending on where you are in the country. In the South, it's spiritual health. In the East Coast, it's family. And in the West Coast, family. Like, it's interesting where I've gone and how I've done these, assessments. But yeah, I love this idea, this collaborative way of, doing business, but still keeping family top priority. So as an entrepreneur, let's talk about how you scaled your business by working with these maniac visionaries, as you call them. Let's talk about that. Like, what have you done? How have you grown your PR firm? What, what makes you different, and what have you done to really grow it?
Yep. Thank you. So, again, my brain, what it does is talks to the world's top ideator visionaries, and I hear blah, 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 and then simplify it into patterns. That's what my brain does. And then I'm very low in ideation on strength finders. So most of my days talking to ideators that provide the great ideas. And then my top 3 strength finders are activate, maximize, achieve. So I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I'll activate, maximize, achieve that into my life. And then more often it's, oh, that's a terrible idea. I'm not going to torch my family or not see my family or not, spend any time with my family. So that's a bad idea. I'm going to activate, maximize, achieve not doing that. So that's how my brain, that's how it works. And so the formula for creating a successful global company is surprisingly simple. It's very simple. So it's you see a problem, create solution, problem, solve, successful global company. So see a problem, create solution, problem. So first company, journalist for 20 years, created entire business based on how PR firms annoyed me for 20 years. So saw a problem, created solution, problem solved. And then second company, annoyed by platforms that let everyone in, because at the highest level, people don't have time for that. So my partner and I, he's in San Francisco, I'm in Chicago. We created LinkedIn without the BS, high price point, invite only connectivity platform for the 0.1%, because people like that don't want to be sold something. They just want to collaborate and grow. And so the second company is 100 times, 10 times, whatever multiple you want to add is to what the PR firm is already doing through connections, through media, through platforms like this. The new company will be, hey, you want to sell your company for 9 figures. You want 10 new, 6-figure coaching clients. You want a connection to a Hollywood script writer. That's what that is. And so scaling purpose in life is what the second company actually is.
Nice. Let's talk about that for a second. This idea of having a LinkedIn type of platform for the 1%. How did you design this? What was the design behind this?
Okay, so I am not the person to ask that. That would be my partner is a full backstage integrator, but he's a bigger visionary than I am. So if you asked me to build a SaaS platform, I would electrocute myself. So the purpose of my life is to be connecting superhero for every visionary. So not business owner, not human, not consultant, just visionary who shares their stories with the world, not there. So PR firm, it just does that through opportunities like this. And then the new companies just through connections for anything. But in terms of who actually built it and the onboarding and all that stuff, that's Mark Fujiwara is the one to ask that. I would be a terrible person to not only ask that, but to answer it, because he does all of that stuff.
Well, if someone wanted to join that, what benefits would they get from being a part of that type of environment? Let's go.
Well, so one, that's a great question. So any visionary would want to be part of that group because it eliminates what do you cost or charge folks. It eliminates most of the world, but it attracts people that can help you sell your company for 9 figures, or get that Hollywood script, or get those 100,000 coaching clients. So that's what my network is. This is just a platform that brings all those folks together.
Nice. Very cool. Very integrative and solution focused.
Correct.
So as you were building both Business One and Business Two, what did you find were the best ways to grow it?
Great question.
You know, you've written several books, a couple of books actually about this idea, both the Epic Life, Epic Business, which if you haven't gotten them, please check them out on Amazon. And you know, let's talk about this. Like, was the book the way that brought it forward? Was it a podcast? Let's get into those details.
Yeah, you're definitely strategic, very high and strategic on your strength finders. Again, most of my day is talking to top ideators, and then they give me the great ideas, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do that. So first book, which is called Epic Business, for company's 30-month anniversary, which was October 16th, 2019. So on October 16th, 2019, that was 30-month anniversary, I posted 30 things I had learned in the company's first 30 months from top entrepreneurs. And I think I don't remember how many, I think at the time I had like 40,000 followers or something like that. And so I posted that list everywhere. And people were like, oh, you need to write a book on this. So I'm like, okay, that's a good idea. I'll do that. And so I'm very thankful. Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference, did the foreword for that book. It's Never Split the Difference. It's one of the best business books in the last 20 years. Very confident saying that. So that one came out in 2020 after COVID, and that one's about how to build a global company with zero business background. So that was very well received. And then this book, the Epic Life book, where Dr. Diamandis wrote the foreword, very grateful for that. I talk to 1 to 2 folks like us every single week that have torched their families or never had one for this life. So I'm like, well, here's 30 more things from top folks on planet of how not to do that, how to actually put your loved ones first and build collaborative global companies. So that was the point of this one, and it continues to do very well. And I think that's the message people like us want. They just don't necessarily know how to do it.
Yeah. So you would say, you know, writing the book, getting them out there, that was key really to building this business, right? You're on podcasts
it's all collaborative with purpose of life. And then being an activator, maximizer, achiever, top 3 strength finders, I don't understand people that don't activate. Like, why would you? The only way to learn anything is by doing something. So like overthinking, over strategizing, and until you actually do something, that's the only way you can learn anything. So both books are just keys that open up endless doors, not only for me, which I'm very thankful for that, but for PR partners as well. It just never stops opening doors, and it'll continue doing that, because how to build collaborative global companies while putting your loved ones first. That's a message I believe so strongly in. And I know people like us believe in that too. They're just confused how to do it. And I know, based on not only my experience, but the people in that book, that it's not only it's possible, but it's super fun when you're actually able to do it.
Yeah. So I haven't read the book, but let's talk about this concept, putting the families first. What's the 1, 2, 3, basic principles of what you can do as you're collaboratively growing while keeping your family first? What do you describe in that book? Main points.
Yep. So my favorite chapter in regards to that is a chapter called Winning the Wrong Game. So I was talking to, I don't know if you know him, Jesse Elder. He's a true 9 quick start visionary genius IQ. And I was talking to him. I'm like, oh, so why did so many of these entrepreneurs focus on material things like car, or big selling, a big sale, or, went on all these trips? And he's like, oh, they're just winning the wrong game. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll write a chapter about that. And so to me, winning the right game is hanging out with family and growing network. And then I found all this other stuff takes care of itself. So any entrepreneur visionary, they're very intelligent. So by asking yourself that question, that's the way to really start getting answers. It's just by putting your mindset in the place of what game am I actually winning in life. So that's one. Number two is certainly not always, but again, my brain turns everything into patterns. Usually people like us marry stabilizing humans. Not always, but usually. So my wife is a pediatrician, full empathy, full schedule, calendar items, lists, all that stuff. And I always ask people like us, so is your spouse a school teacher or an engineer or a lawyer who's a lawyer, or I don't know, a PhD in relational studies or something like that, or something like a borderline human, you know what I mean, like a view. And they're like, how did you know that? I go, well, imagine marrying yourself. That wouldn't necessarily be the best idea. It does happen, but really having that stabilizing human at home and certainly in office or whatever that is, virtual office, that's incredibly important.
I'm going to touch on this real quick, and then we're going to get back to your thoughts here, which is a little bit of a tangent, which is super important. My first sociology class, my bachelor's degree at Brigham Young University, the professor gets up and says, birds of a feather flock together or opposites attract. And we're talking about, yes. Attraction, right? And physical attraction. And he's like, everybody raise your hand. And we're like, yeah, opposites attract. He's like, wrong. Birds of a feather flock together. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. It can't be. And he went on to show us that what happens is we tend to think that we're so much different, but in reality, we are very, very similar, except for one thing.
Which is? And
that one thing, it tends to be our personality type, more of our attitudes, our direction, because that tends to be like you're calling a stabilizing. I actually really like that word. But it's more, some people call it an opposite, but the reality is we tend to have same goals, same direction,
same values.
Yeah.
It's a different way of going there.
Yeah. Yes. And so I actually built my dissertation on that concept, that one concept.
Were you married at the time?
I was, yeah. And my wife and I, same values, right? We have same value system. We're same members of the church.
What is she educated? What is she?
She's educated in family and social sciences, like myself. So like we would have met in a class anyway, but we met in our neighborhood and in our church. And what's interesting is that really the biggest difference that we have is she's more of a calming effect and I'm more of 100%. The visionary, get it done, like, come on, let's do it. And
right. Like, well, let's stabilizing human.
Yes. Yeah. And so what's interesting about that is that the research in family studies, they do kind of give a wink and a nod to, yes, we know opposites don't actually really attract in that way, but when it comes to personalities, they kind of need to. Because long term, like you said, you don't want to marry yourself. That would be a horrible life sentence.
It happens sometimes. It does.
Yeah, sure it can. But anyway, it's very interesting. Anyway, go back to your thoughts. I just want to take a little bit of a tangent.
Oh, well, that's the only, because if that's not solved at home or wherever that is, then the other stuff doesn't really matter. That's what because you talk about balance and growth. If you can't grow at home with whatever, partner, then how are you supposed to grow as a entrepreneur? I mean, that's just the way I get it. Okay. So the tangent was the key. So in terms of scientific non-personality things for whatever it is. Not always, but usually, I'm guessing you're a relatively high quick start in Kolbe, Kolbe, but usually high quick start, low follow through. So think ADHD, diagnosed or undiagnosed. Usually people like that marry stabilizing humans, which means low quick start, high follow through. So my wife is a lower quick start, higher follow through, who, because she's married to me, now takes more chances in life. Like she enjoys life more because I take more risks. And then she is with her follow through and reminder like, hey, make sure you say thank you to people, or don't forget to pick your children up at school. She's made me a human in some capacity. So that's how it's worked. But our values are the same. It's totally family first and balanced straight life first. It's just we're completely different. I mean, she'd be the worst entrepreneur of all time. There'd be so many lawsuits against me as a pediatrician. It would be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, but it's interesting. It's worth talking about how this fits in together. Well, as you've built your business, as you've been able to scale and grow, obviously you've been talking about putting families first and how you do it. And this idea of relationships, which is awesome. It's been really fun to talk about. What do you see personally, Justin, as the biggest issue for you as you're scaling and growing to keep your family first, keeping that balance?
Oh, that's okay. So I'm guessing I will have a different answer than anyone you've ever, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm guessing I'll have a different answer because being a journalist, you don't become a journalist to focus on business stuff. So like, I get a question quite a bit of like, what are you worried about with the business? So the honest answer is I'm not worried about anything business related. What actually worries me is anything happening to my wife. That would be a real problem because my wife has 3 children. She has our 2 sons and then me. And then she got COVID. She got COVID at the end of 2020. I mean, being a pediatrician, that makes sense. And so she was quarantined for a couple of weeks upstairs, and I watched the 2 kids by myself while doing things like this. And they didn't have, if school was online then. And if you've ever seen the movie Animal House, or for your audiences, that's what our house looked like at the end of the 2. So that's what legitimately scares me, is anything happening to her. Sure. But in terms of the business approach, like, I was a journalist, so you don't get into that I've made more money doing this than I ever thought. I mean, there was never any intent to make a lot of money. So everything to me has been just icing on this. And then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. And I think most people, especially my clients, ones I've worked with, most of them, their heart's in the right place. They really do say, I want to put my family first, or God first, or their own health first, like those top 3.
Yes. But
when push comes to shove, their worry becomes the business. Yes. Their worry becomes their clients. And over time, they develop into what I've identified in the book, Achieving Balance, as the workaholic trap. They get kind of stuck. And their heart is in the right place, but their actions are not. And they're not congruent. Therefore, they become stressed. And that stress eats at them, right? And that stress can kill them.
Yes.
And, heart disease is a big issue in this country. It's actually the number 1 killer. Male,
is that
female,
how your dad
child.
died? Is that how
my father died?
That's how mine died too, but he wasn't 49.
Yeah. And I honestly think stress was a huge factor with my own father. That's why I studied this. That's why I wanted to know what's going on.
Was he an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneur. Yeah. Very much a visionary, very much a go-getter.
Did he have ADHD?
No, he didn't. He was very organized, and, but I will tell you this, that, one of the biggest things that I've seen, especially with my clients, is that once they have a system, once they have a structure, once they learn some new habits, they can be coached through this, and they can reach their destination. And I imagine that with your help, they can also bring their collaborative message to the world in a way that, allows them to keep their balance. And I'm all for that. I'm all for supporting those endeavors. What do you see for other entrepreneurs that struggle with balanced growth? What do you see as maybe some of the biggest issues out there for others that you've worked with?
So thank you. That was great. Again, my brain turns everything into patterns. Okay. So, and then all I do is talk to visionaries, people like your dad. Okay. And you. So this is what separates from entrepreneurs, from humans, consultants, business owners. Okay. This is all that separates them. And I'm not talking about silver spoon. I'm talking about someone who started something from nothing. I have not met one person like us, not one. This is what entrepreneur life actually is. But I have not met one person like us that has not overcome at least one of the following four things. Most are two or three. The really successful ones are usually all fours. I have not talked to anyone who's less than three of the four. I've talked to one person in the last year that's less than three of the four. Okay, so these are the four things. 1, bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy. 2, depression. 3, highest level of anxiety that you can imagine. 4, likely and or possible traumatic experiences as a child or young adult. So for humans, business owners, consultants, those are excuses. That's what keeps them small or go back to the workforce or from starting anything big. For entrepreneurs, figure it out. Fuel. Your dad dies when you're 26, figure it out. Create something. Learn something from it. So the unfortunate dovetail to that learning lesson is not always, certainly not always, but many times entrepreneurs use those four things to create massive company, massive wealth, massive number of cars, and then many times at expense of having anything meaningful, torch their family, never see their family. So what entrepreneurs actually are, what a visionary actually is, they're the most damaged person with the best coping skills, the most trauma, the most anxiety, most depression, most potential bankruptcy, but they have the highest IQ, highest EQ, most guts. So they have all the coping skills. They just put it into their companies as opposed to the meaning. That's entrepreneur life.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to what you express.
That's entrepreneur. That's it. That's why most people can't do it, because they can't overcome those things.
Yeah, as I studied abnormal psychology, and in detail in my master's, like they have a class or 2 or 3 is like abnormal psych, and I knew I didn't want to go down that route because I would become a therapist. And therapists, quite honestly, they're needed in our society. Yes. But unfortunately, what I found is that most men don't take the time to go to a therapist. And so I was like, well, how can I actually reach the people that need me? Well, yes. I can get trained in all of this, yes. and I can become a coach and yes. really help them the best that I can here. And if they need additional help, I can be the first line of defense and send them to the right people that need, that they need help from. So it's interesting that you mentioned depression, anxiety, bankruptcy, trauma. I mean, yes.
Are you all for?
Yeah. There's no question. Okay. I was at a spot. I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast. I was at a spot in my life before I started all this. I was getting started, and it was 2008 when everything hit the fan. Right, the Great Recession began. My house was underwater. I had several liens on our home, and I had 3 attorneys who said bankruptcy, and my wife and I were like, nah, let's dig out.
How many kids did you have then in 2008?
We had 4, and we dug out. We dug out. And that kind of goes to that next point that you have about most damage with coping skills. It's like, well, I have the IQ to do this. And I
What's
have
your IQ? 150? What's your IQ?
Idea. You don't know? No clue. But I know it's high enough to fit. Like, I knew how to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had the intelligence. I had the spreadsheets. And so I negotiated with not 1, 7 lien holders. 7. Right. When we sold our home, the real estate agent he just shook his head like, sorry, dude, this isn't going to sell. I said, I believe in miracles. And we sold it, and we were able to negotiate with all 7 different banks, and got through it. And I honestly believe it was a miracle. But I look at that as a start. Like, I'm not going to let a bankruptcy get me down. I'm not going to, and that's their emotional resilience. And I think you're exactly right. Entrepreneurs need to They need to have that, or else what are they? They've got to be the leader. They've got to be that visionary that can bounce back from whatever gets thrown at them through the economy, through politics. I could go on. So yeah, I think you
That's
really
what it
nailed
is.
Justin.
It's
Yeah.
in the 4.5 or fifth one is addiction. Entrepreneurship is an addiction. It's the same as drugs, or it's the same.
Yep.
Your dad, you just said your dad died at 49. I mean, he probably wasn't doing drugs, I'm guessing, but
No,
I think that's what entrepreneurship is, a drug. So
yeah, and I found that in the DSM-5, and I talk about it in my book, the psychiatrists use the DSM-5, psychologists use the DSM-5 to diagnose various addictions and diagnoses, and workaholism is a classified addiction.
100%.
So that's where I have kind of gone and said, hey, let's focus on this one thing and let's turn this around. And I would absolutely agree. A lot of them have addictive personalities or have dealt with addictive behaviors in the past as coping mechanisms.
That's what it is.
Self-medicating coping mechanisms. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So entrepreneurs, again, most damaged people with best coping skills. So the most damage, not like half. That's why when I first started First Company, in the first couple of years, I was still talking to ones and twos out of those fours because it was small business owners or consultants or even some employees. They didn't have enough trauma to become. They just didn't have. In the last year, I've talked to one person who's had less than 3 of those 4 things. It's basically a requirement. And then if your IQ and EQ weren't high enough, there's no way you'd be, and it's not a compliment. It's just most people don't have the IQ and the EQ and the coping skills to be able to do this. That's why I say we only partner with visionaries. It's a very small number or percentage of the population, but we maybe partner with 0.1% of the population. So most people think that's small, but 0.1% of 8 billion is 8 million people. So there's 8 million views out there, and that they're the ones that actually help everyone else.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's interesting that you brought that up. So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs? I mean, you've written several books, you provide great solutions in the PR firm, and you have this fantastic collaborative network out there. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give other entrepreneurs who aren't making it in balanced growth? They're not balanced. They're not growing the way they want to in all areas of life. Maybe they are doing very well at business. What would you tell them?
So in Gallup Clifton Strength Finders, I'm dead last in empathy and second to last in includer. However, for people like you, I have endless empathy, endless understanding of that doesn't surprise me in any capacity of what you just said about what you went through. I mean, that's just so I feel that at a very strong level. So, and you already said it, you've never said what you just said on your podcast before. So what I have found is having these discussions and bringing up the all 4, what happens is the unconscious or the subconscious is brought out into the conscious, and entrepreneurs, they're very smart, IQ, intelligence-wise humans, or barely human. And so by bringing that unconscious out into the conscious is really the first step. That's why that question is, are you winning the wrong game, or what game am I winning? That's the most important question for that type of thing, because, I had this big exit and, have all this money or all this stuff, but I haven't seen my family in 2 years, or I don't talk to my children. I'm like, that's a bad idea. Maybe I should change my priorities and things. But that's the first step, is acknowledging what the gap is in your life.
Yeah. And if they don't know the gap, if they don't see it, it's in the subconscious. I mean, I know what I do to try to help, advisors, business owners, entrepreneurs deal with this. What do you do? How do you help them see that? Or what resources would you tell them to go see?
You just answered your own question by talking about your story on your own show. I mean, that's what. So as a journalist, I don't really like to talk unless it's in a format like this, but I'll just ask things or say those 4 things and then ask people where they come from. And then they'll start telling me their actual story. And then in terms of what media needs, they only need 2 things. One is a good story, which everyone has, what you've overcome in life, what inspires you, why you're doing this, what's been your biggest challenge. Everyone has that. They just don't, and certainly visionaries have that. They just don't know how to do it. And then 2 is a news peg. A news peg is, why is it a story now? So a new book, a new company, whatever. So then my brain is blah, 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 blah. And then simplify, here's your 500-word story. And then it's immediate connect to media opportunities, media. And then you share your story with the world, with other visionaries, and then they become collaborators, partners, investors, whatever happens with that.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, this has been a really fun discussion, Justin. I appreciate your perspective on this. And, if entrepreneurs, visionaries especially, want to come and seek your help and find you, where's the best place to go?
Probably the main website, which is brepicllc.com, brepicllc.com. And there's a fun little mindset scorecard. It takes 5 minutes and people like taking it. It's only 5 minutes, and then people qualify or disqualify themselves with their own mindset, which is what I found super interesting.
So would you suggest they take yours or take the Kolbe? You've talked about the Kolbe.
Oh, both. Definitely take the Kolbe. Yeah, because there are exceptions, but a true visionary, overwhelming majority of the time will be an 8, 9, or 10 quick start with little to no follow through. So again, that's ADHD, diagnosed or undiagnosed. I have high quick start, high follow through, and high fact finder, which is very, 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 very rare.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for making the time to be here on the Balanced Growth Show. We've really appreciated you and your expertise.
Thank you. This was a tremendous interview.
Yeah, thank you. And if you've enjoyed being the fly on the wall, listening to Justin and I chat back and forth about these incredible challenges and opportunities as entrepreneurs to balance and grow yourself in every area of life, please like, share, subscribe, send us to someone else who needs it and who needs to hear what Justin has to say, and maybe some comments we've made back and forth. It has been a pleasure. And until next time, remember, live life on purpose.